Welcome to Creating Cash Flow. My name is Dallin Wardrop, and today on this live stream, we are going to be talking about how I saved my first $100,000 and why that's important. And maybe you can take away just a couple tips and tricks, not really tips and tricks, but really just some motivation to be able to keep at it and just keep working towards your financial goals. So the reason why getting from $0 to $100,000 is so important is because having $100,000 or really building that base is like building a jetpack. So going from no jetpack to a jetpack it's really hard. You have to put all the pieces together. You have to learn how to build a jetpack. You have to go through, put in all the work, put in all the time to build a jetpack. And really, if everyone's starting from zero, no one has an advantage. There isn't some place that you could invest your money and get some major advantage unless you're investing very risky, which is not how my approach at it. So let me tell you why. If you invest, and I have a little investment calculator. If you haven't been to calculator.net and played around yet, you will really love it. I love it. So basically, if you're starting at zero, absolutely zero, and you have a 5%, let's do 5% first. You have a 5% return, which you can get right now on Wealthfront. I'm getting a 5% return on Wealthfront, which is no risk at all. And if I were to save $1,000 a month, $1,000 a month at 5%, it's going to take me 7 full years. So like at the end of the seventh year, I would have $100,000. So now let's imagine we invested that same amount of money. So we're starting at zero and we're going to invest that same amount of money, but we're going to get a 10% return. So we're investing $1,000 every single month, and we're going to come in here with a 10% annual return. And that is going to take me just over 7 years. So you'll work through the sixth year, you'll have $96,000, and then into the seventh year, you'll be hitting your $100,000. So the reason why the first $100,000 is so important is because there's really no advantage in the very beginning on compound interest based on the return that you're getting, because the return on, and I'm sure we've all been here, but the return on $5 isn't very high. If it's 10% or even if it's 20%, you don't get that much money. It doesn't make a huge impact on your $5. But once you have $100,000 and you're getting a 10% return, then that starts to compound and really grow pretty quickly. But the big hurdle is building that first jetpack, building that first $100,000. And it is very tedious and it's very hard. And so let me tell you how I did it. The first is I worked really hard. I had a main focus on, actually just staying alive. I moved to New York City out of college, and New York City rent is high, the food is expensive, and so the big thing was and I didn't actually have a normal salary job out of college, so I ended up getting 4 hourly paying jobs. So the first hourly paying job was at Ted Baker, which I had never worked in, like a clothing store before selling clothes. So they put me in the women's section. So that was my first experience ever, but I was in Columbus Circle working at Ted Baker. The next is I was a receptionist. So as people came in, I'd check them in, I'd answer phone calls, schedule appointments, some basic stuff like that. Finally, I was also a tennis pro. So I played tennis growing up, and I would go coach tennis. And tennis, it's very expensive in New York City, but the pro doesn't get very much money. So I wasn't making I was making like basically nothing as a tennis pro. It's also very difficult to get hours as a tennis pro because there's a lot of tennis pros in New York City, and there's only so many courts. So that was my third one. And then my fourth one was I was the co-founder of a startup. And as part of that, I told him, hey, look, I want to put time here, but I am like my partner. I told him I want to put time here, but I will have like, I need to make money because this is my situation. So he paid me a little bit, just a very little. And then the rest of my pay I took in equity. So, most days I was working, well, definitely every day I was working at least 2 jobs, and this is probably Monday through Saturday, I was working at least 2 jobs. Many days I was working 3 jobs, and most days I would say I was starting at least by 5 a.m. or 7 a.m., where I had to be clocked in and working. So that was a very that was just a lot of hard work, and for me, I found that there was just no getting around that. If I wanted to make money and have a little extra to save, I had to work really hard. So the second thing is I spent less than I earned. So the big thing here is you have to take the time to budget and track your finances, which is terrible. I hate doing that. And but it's critical because you have to know how much money I made and then how much money I spent and make sure that you're not operating your life at a loss. So how I did it is I went through and had a spreadsheet that started out very simple of just basic money coming in, money going out, which worked in the very beginning for the first few years, but then it got more and more complicated. But I just tracked it on a free spreadsheet on Google Drive. So that's something obviously anyone could do. I think they even have templates for finance tracking within some of like in Google Drive. I built my own, but I don't know that I would recommend that. And then the third thing that I did is I stuck with it. It's really hard to want to wake up at 5 a.m. and go to bed late because either you're out with friends and you're trying to enjoy your life, or you're working late, but then you have to be back early anyway, especially when you're working different jobs and they don't know your hours at other jobs. So they don't know that you were working late the day before. And now the next morning you're up at 4 a.m. to cross town and get to your job by 5 a.m. So I just stuck with it, just kept going over and over and over and worked this process for at least 2 years, probably almost 3 years, at which point I finally started getting raises, better jobs, and things started looking like they were going in a better direction for me. And I guess the big takeaway here is that if I can do it, you can definitely do it. It's just hard. There's no getting around how we get that first 100K. And once we do get that first 100K, that's where things really start to snowball and your dividend. And it's 100K invested, I should say, 100K invested in the market, because that's when you start noticing that, hey, I actually do get some, my dividend payouts aren't 12 cents. They start getting more meaningful, and from there, it will compound, and play around with the investment calculator on calculator.net. It's free, but you'll be able to see that 100,000 to 1 million is way more exciting. And you'll start realizing that you did, even though it took 7 years, 8 years, or maybe longer, even though it took that amount of time and your compounding interest didn't feel like it was doing anything. Once you get to the $100,000 mark, it's like you finally have that jetpack and it's starting to take off. There's probably going to be some tweaks you'll need to make to the jetpack based on the decisions you made while building it. But overall, uh, yeah, overall, you can do it. And thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe. See ya.